Welcome to the Only Dream Big podcast, starring your host, Donnie Bedney. Only Dream Big is a podcast where Donnie will share tips and experiences on different topics, such as acquisition entrepreneurship, human capital, and the future of the workforce. He is the president of PSP Metrics and has been in the assessment and human capital management industry for more than 15 years, with the goal of driving change through people. As your guide on dreaming big, let's hear from the man himself.
I love it. Hey, welcome everyone to yet another episode of the Only Dream Big podcast. I am your host, Donnie Bedney, and as always, just excited to be back with you all. We have a special guest today, Mayor Frank Whitfield, with us all the way from Elyria, Ohio. Frank, welcome.
Thank you, Donnie. It's good to be with you. Good to see you again, and looking forward to the chat. And salute to you, everything you do, podcast, and with our culture and our community.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you. So, at the Only Dream Big podcast, one of the arguably only questions that is the exact same question that we ask to all of our guests is, growing up, right, was being the mayor, because I believe, and if I'm misspeaking, correct me, but I believe you're actually from Elyria, Ohio. And so, is this something, that you dreamed about being the mayor, growing up in Elyria, or, is this something like, when did that officially kind of evolve or crystallize for you, if you will?
Yeah, so again, I'm excited to talk with you about dreaming and visions, that we all have as kids, and how those things kind of change and morph and adapt to the realities that we live. And, so as a kid, I had no intent on being a mayor. My dream was multifaceted. One was, of course, to go to the NBA. I thought I could, I had hoop dreams.
Love it.
And then I also always wanted to be an inventor. I always wanted to invent things. And I think it was because one of my uncles, God rest his soul, was an engineer. And I always thought that he was an inventor. And come to find out later on in life, I found out he was an inventor.
Wow.
And so I always wanted to be an inventor. And so my mind has always been in this mode of trying to invent things. And and about 12 years ago now, as I was doing different work out in the community, I was at a church service, and the pastor at the church service walked over and he said, "In 10 years, you'll be mayor of the City of Elyria." And I'm like,
wow.
Okay. It didn't make any sense at the time. I was working part-time. I was doing community work, but it wasn't on my radar, but it was definitely a seed planted in my mind. It stuck with me. And as I began to progress in my career, it just started to make more sense and started to align. And I started to see the skill sets that I had and the experiences I had would serve my city well. And, in 2019, my wife and I, we prayed on it. We had a couple other, divine interventions happen and made it clear that this is what we were supposed to do. And I literally quit my job in April, and it was all or nothing, when it came to running. And we ran a campaign based on a positive outlook of the future and what we believe was possible. And fortunately, that resonated with the voters here. And in November of that year, I was elected the first African-American mayor elected in our county's 200 plus year history, and also the first independent mayor in our city's history. So it definitely was groundbreaking, and it's been quite a ride since.
Yeah. Well, I mean, phenomenal, man. Phenomenal. And for our listeners, I had the pleasure of meeting you actually while you were doing some of that community work, right? With the Urban League, years ago, and talking about strengths and, all of these things. And so I know, throughout your life, you've kind of, grown and really been a person who's kind of focused on personal development, as a way to, grow yourself, right?
Okay.
And so, do you mind attempting to unpack, right? Because being the first at anything, I think aligns just so well with this whole concept of only dreaming big, because there always has to be a first. And
Mhm.
so I'm curious, and can only imagine from the time that we've known each other that, part of what you're doing is kind of blazing a trail, if you will, for others who come after you. But for others who are thinking through, maybe have a grand vision, but hasn't necessarily been done before. Can you unpack some of the process, that you went through as
Yeah.
this dream was kind of like evolving and maturing in your mind? Because we just love sharing like practical and kind of pragmatic tips for other dreamers, right? Who
Yeah.
may not, see someone who looks like them or see someone who has done even what they, kind of envision doing. What are some things that, or next steps or exercises that they could take to kind of move in that direction?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to unpack there. I think there's a couple semesters of work there to get there, because it's a lifetime work. I mean, I think when you're talking about personal development, especially in the climate like we're in right now, where people are kind of reassessing their future.
Hmm.
They call it the Great Resignation, but I think people are really just kind of reassessing their life. Like, is this really what I want to be doing my entire life? Should I have
Mm.
been doing this in the first place? And I
Hmm.
think a part of the work that we've done together around strengths finding is really around this idea of self awareness.
Mm.
And how aware can you be, or can you get about yourself, around your strengths, around your
Hmm.
propensities, around your dispositions,
Mm.
and I think that comes from um, reading. I think, for
Hmm.
one, I think that with technology now, it's so advanced that you can get, you know um, just answering a set of questions over a 30-minute period, they can spot on be able to say, hey, here's your kind of disposition as a person. Here are
Mm.
some of the things that your strengths are. And
Hmm.
then I think a part of the beauty is the journey of figuring out, all right, how do I put these strengths to use? How do I
Yeah.
put this disposition to use? How can I add value to other people's lives based on my God-given talent? How can I
Mm.
put this to use? And I think that's been a journey I've been on since 2006. My first year of college, I failed out of college. I had a 0.7 grade point average.
Mm.
Um, had a number of personal issues I was dealing with,
Hmm.
and drugs. I was just really in a bad place. And mind you, I was a 4.0 student in high school. I was the freshman class president. I
Wow.
was like, if you would have looked at me in ninth grade, you would have said, "Oh, I knew he was going to be here." If you would have
Got it.
looked at me in 12th grade, you would have said, "There's no freaking way he's going to be here." so, um, just a set of bad decisions, and a lot of bad options.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that in a lot of our low income communities, which I was brought up in one. You don't see a lot of examples. You don't
Mm.
feel like you have a lot of choices and options. So you
Yeah.
start to create this identity around things that are toxic, and things that aren't
Mm.
realistic and really aren't things that align with who you are. It's just the few things that you see you could be: an athlete, a preacher,
Yeah.
a barber. And then once you realize, hey, I can't, I'm not good, I'm not going to make it in any of those things, then you just really get out here and start exploring. So, a part of my journey after giving my life to the Lord and really getting serious about, I'm going to figure out what my purpose in life is,
Hmm.
um, has led me to just some amazing experiences. I got the chance to go down to New Orleans as a service trip and help out with rebuilding after Hurricane Katrina. And it
Wow.
was it was a team project, and we got a bunch of different college students and high school students to go.
Hmm.
But I was able to see within that group where my strengths lie. I was able to see,
Mm.
like, people were deferring to me to speak. When we would get in the
Mm.
group, they would, or they defer to me on the technological side of things. So I started to see, okay, this is something that I might be good at. And then as
Okay.
as as I had good mentors around me that would affirm those things and say, hey, you're a really good speaker, or you're really good at solving problems, you're really good in getting the group motivated.
Yeah.
Those seeds were just being planted. And then, of course, as you get to these kind of technological things like the Strengthsfinder,
Yeah.
they kind of give you that language to describe what these strengths are. So,
Mm,
as I did those, I'm like, okay, what this is the strength of an activator. Got it.
mm,
What this is the strength of being a ideation, and that's why I'm always coming up
mm,
with these ideas. What this is the strength of being strategic. That's why I'm always thinking about ways
mm.
to get things done differently. So it gave
Yeah.
me that kind of language to kind of say, okay, this is what I'm good at. And I feel like for listeners out there, that whole idea of kind of self-awareness, of going on a journey to figure out what your dispositions are, what your strengths are,
Hmm.
really looking inside, you'd be surprised what you find, and then be willing to make the risk to leverage those strengths and
Hmm.
leverage those dispositions. We were having a leadership session with our department head. So here at the city, we got about 460 plus employees.
Mm.
We got a number of supervisors. So we're trying to make sure we pour into our leaders some of the things that I've learned and some of the folks around me know, to make sure they're getting built up.
Hmm.
And in our session yesterday, we did the DISC assessment, which kind of talks
Mm.
about
Hmm.
the dominant style, the influential style, the
Yep.
supportive style, the compliance style.
Yep.
And it was interesting because we reached a moment in the session where it got really uncomfortable because some people's disposition didn't necessarily match the work they were doing. And
Mm.
it begged the question of who's gonna go first. Who's is it is it you getting pushed out of the role because it doesn't fit? Do you try to change who you are, which isn't sustainable? It can get you by for a little bit. Or
Hmm.
do you come to the realization that says this really isn't a fit for my style and how I like to work? So instead of all of us
Mm.
being miserable, how about we think about a different way of getting what we're trying to accomplish done, or maybe me think about a different role. And I think
Mm.
that's the courage piece that often has been lacking, but I think the pandemic has really pushed us to
Hmm.
really be like, hey, is this what I'm supposed to be doing right now? And I think after that self-awareness, having the courage to say, hey, I'm not gonna, and it's tough when you come from, we talked about this, when you come from lack of means
Yeah.
to get out of that survival mode of thinking. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
and you had some really interesting thoughts about that. I love to hear them. But when you get out of this survival mode and you get into this mode of, okay, if I wasn't in survival mode, what would I do?
Hmm.
And oftentimes it's not what you're doing right now. And so
Yeah.
to be able to say, all right, I'm going to take a risk. And I was with someone the other day, sidebar, a former mayor just retired. I asked him what he was going to be doing now he's in retirement. Was he into his politics? He said, no, I'm getting into aerospace.
Hmm.
I'm like, what? He's like, I've always dreamed of being aerospace. And it
Yep.
was almost like I was so proud of his answer. I'm like, he didn't feel like he had to stay in a box after doing
Hmm.
something for 30 plus years. So salute to Mayor Berger for sharing that. And I think that's a good starting point for folks.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, to your point, in some of our pre-discussion, right? What I've experienced with people who have, achieved some of their dreams, right, that they've set out to achieve, um, they typically do not, achieve that dream and then just stop dreaming, right? So let's go ahead and be the myth busters
Mm-hmm.
for everyone who hears this, that whatever your dream is, you may accomplish it, right? That does not mean that that is the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, for people that I know who have multiple dreams, the advice that I will give anyone who, under the sound of our voice today, or that I meet in the future, who has multiple dreams, my advice is always the same, which is you may be able to, like, it is very possible for you to achieve all of the things that you dream. It just may not all happen at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so when you talk about aerospace or anything else, to have an individual who's achieved, a level of success or a dream that they've, set out, and maybe have lived that, right, to the end of its course, it's just example after example after example, of, I think, to your point, as you spend time in that thing, right? I think that you begin to uh, and shout out to James Clear, because I'm listening to Atomic Habits right now, right? And just this morning on the plane to Pittsburgh, one of the things he talks about is your identity is really what, like, the depth of like what you achieve, right? So it's not about your dreams, it's about how you like who you identify with or who you see yourself as, that actually fuels you to become whatever that is. And
Yep.
so using your friend, it's interesting because I think the more that you identify as, hey, I am a person who is an achiever, right? I say I'm going to do something and I go figure it out, right?
Mhm.
Those are people who then, will, as their dreams evolve, they will step in and be like, hey, I am a person who works in the aerospace industry,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
because they see themselves as a person who works in the aerospace industry, a great example, a bunch of people are posting, I guess today and otherwise, about Kobe Bryant, and his daughter Gigi, God rest his soul, right? And there's been a lot of Mamba mentality, conversations and stuff, and just in reading a lot, about Kobe, going down as arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. I remember hearing
Definitely
a number
arguable.
of, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
anything's arguable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We're not a sports pod, but arguably the greatest player of all time. The interesting thing to me was to see him shift where, he creates a movie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And gets that award, right? He won NBA championships, right? He became an investor, right? There, some information about, that water company, Body Armor,
Yep.
which just sold, and was at a value, his ownership stake was larger than all of his NBA earnings combined in a lump sum, right? But he saw himself as the greatest basketball player of all time. He identified
Yeah, but he didn't
as
limit
that,
himself to it.
and
Yeah.
then yeah, because he shifted his identity. It was like, okay, I am now an investor.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I think that there's significant power there, man. And even in your story, if I was, starting to, leave some breadcrumbs for our listeners, just continuing to listen to those points in your life where you begin forming an identity about who you are and who you could
Yeah.
become in the future,
Yeah, I think, and
because
that's
those
one of
things may be different.
yeah, and one of the challenges that a lot of folks experience is that those voices haven't been productive voices. They haven't been
Hmm.
helpful voices.
Hmm.
So those folks who have shaped their identity have been the folks who have said, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this.
Hmm.
Nobody has done this before, so don't try, and that's not the
Hmm.
way. So their identity has been uh, built by people who had their own fears and insecurities that they
Hmm.
projected onto them. So, I think one of the key pieces um, is making sure you're surrounding yourself around people that see your value, that
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
affirm your value and how
Hmm.
important it is. You would hope that it'd be your parents would be your first person, but for some folks, it's not their parents, so they got to find mentors and other folks
Hmm.
um, that can speak into them. And how
Yeah.
privileged and blessed are we to
Yeah.
have people that have been in our life that have spoken that. And I think it's a part of our job to now speak that in other people when we see things
Yeah.
in people, to make sure we are those people who are affirming and um, and calling out people's strengths and letting them know, hey,
Hmm.
you're really good at this. I
Yeah.
don't know what you're going to do with it, but I know you're really good at this,
Yeah.
and being that source.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And as we're both looking in the camera today, right? Just for anyone who hears this, or if you see this on YouTube or anything along those lines, please feel free to share. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, the pod exists, right? Is ideally to give people encouragement, to pour into people, just as a way to plant a seed, or give encouragement, to folks. Because at the end of the day, whether you have folks in your immediate circle or not, if you see or desire more for yourself in life, I would recommend to you that at the end of the day, you can get to wherever you want. I am sure that there are multiple examples in your life and otherwise of people who have taken circumstances that are even worse than where you're coming from and achieved what you're looking to achieve. And if anything, I can say today that Mayor Frank Whitfield and I believe in you. And if there's a way that we can encourage you just from our conversation today, then I hope that this ultimately kind of fuels you or serves as a spark for the achievement of your dream. It's technology, man, gift and a curse. Folks, we are back. I am sure that just overall, you may have needed this time just to let some of those jewels kind of settle for you, that we were covering. But I think that just overall, just amazing conversation. Once again, we're with Mayor Frank Whitfield. So excited to continue this conversation, and as we continue to talk about dreams, right? You were unpacking some of that as we were talking about identity and seeing yourself, not who you are currently, although, and we talked about this a little bit in our I think that it is so important to have a clear understanding of who you are and where you are today, and then go out and have a clear vision of who you want to be in the future.
Yep.
And then begin working your way, kind of systematically, to get there.
Well, it's interesting.
Ahead.
Of what you're sharing is it's how they trained us. So I got my MBA at Case Western Reserve University. Shout outs to Case. That's the Case is the place to be. I'm like, Case, y'all making mayors. You got Mayor of Elyria, Mayor of Cleveland, both Case grads, young folks. I'm like, Case,
there we go.
Y'all gonna have to sign us an endorsement deal or something because we out here being good spokespeople.
I might have to get my MBA again.
No.
Go to Case.
Repeat. But one of the things they trained us on was around the theory of intentional change, and they trained us around kind of the psychology and the brain chemistry around change. And the reason I wanted to make sure I jumped in is because one of the things they trained us was that you want to focus initially on the ideal version that you want to be as the first step, as opposed to the real version.
Love it. Yeah.
Because when you have your mindset on the ideal where you want to go, that gives you the fuel and motivation to deal with where you're at right now. Versus sometimes when you start with the real of where you are, it can be so discouraging that it's hard to muster up and it just showed, like, the brain chemistry wise, it was a lot more difficult to get people to imagine what they could be when they were only focusing on what was. And I think that's the beauty of when you think about a child is all about thinking about what's not real. You know what I mean? As a kid, your imagination is just like, you're not putting limitations on your imagination. Like, one day I'm going to fly, or one day your imagination is just so out there. And, I think that's why, the Bible talks about just having that childlike faith. And some of us kind of need to get back to that place of, if there were no constraints, again, if you weren't in survival mode, if there were no constraints, what would you be doing? Who would you be if there weren't constraints? Who would you, and then, okay, let's talk about where you are now and how do we close that gap, and who's here to support you to close that gap? So,
well, and one of the ways someone said it to me, man, it's powerful. That is extremely powerful. Folks, rewind that, listen to that again, put it on repeat. That may be a reel coming soon. So, I mean, just listen to that on repeat. I had somebody tell me years ago and we were talking about dreams and all of that, and to relate to your point and build on that, um, she revealed to me, she said, hey, you've been pushing and fighting to achieve different things in your life so much, um, that you don't truly understand that when you embrace like the magnitude of your dream and who you're really supposed to be,
Mm.
that vision is strong enough to pull you.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny,
I was like,
for you to be.
wow.
It's funny when you were speaking, it made me think about Kobe. So we were talking about Mamba mentality and Kobe, and I don't know if you ever saw the clip. I think it was Kobe Bryant's first All-Star game, and Michael Jordan and everybody in the locker room, and they're talking
Mm,
about Kobe. They're like the young guy, and they
yeah,
said he just forces the game. They're like he doesn't let the game come to him; he forces it. And if you
yeah,
look at the early Kobe, him shooting an air ball three, he was really forcing the game. But if you think about the greats, and I think later on in his career, he more came to an embracing of the game.
mhm,
MJ, the fadeaway is the classic. That to me is the quintessential letting the game come to you. I'm going to stand here, put my back to you, get a feel for what you're going to give me. And then,
mhm,
I'm not going to force the game. You know what I mean? I
mhm,
think LeBron is another one where people get mad at him because, he'll pass to the open man and he doesn't force the shot, but he's learned to
mhm,
like embrace the game, embrace what's there. And
mhm,
and when I heard you speaking, that's kind of what I heard you speaking to is like this idea of,
mhm.
you can get real frustrated trying to force the game and force things to go your way
Yeah,
versus really kind of embracing, the rules of engagement, the rules of the game, the laws of nature, the who you
mhm,
are, and
yeah,
figuring out, all right, how do I position myself to win?
yeah,
So that's kind of what I was hearing when you were
yeah.
saying.
Well, and yeah, man, and I think that's a really solid point. I've never thought about that analogy, at all. But when you think about, professional athletes, those who are willing to embrace, really and truly who they are, I think that those are the folks with staying power, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because you understand like who you are, where you can best kind of fit roles that you can play and all of those things. And I think you can see that across all sports, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's the folks who, think that they're still the best player because they were the best in middle school,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that have those quick exits, right?
No doubt, no doubt.
Especially when you're talking about professional sports. So, and we're kind of winding down. Really appreciate your time, today. But one of the things that you just mentioned, and this the second, kind of part or core piece of the Only Dream Big podcast is driving change through people, and you've referenced a couple of times, not only, having clarity yourself of the person who, you want to be, right? And who you're looking to become, but also surrounding yourself. You've referenced, mentors and, other relationships and stuff like that. And so, can you speak for a little bit just about, maybe some of the process that you've gone through at different times of your life, as you've thought about, different things that you're looking to achieve, and maybe maybe it's two pronged at least, which is, how have you surrounded yourself or put yourself in an environment where you're surrounded by people who maybe have achieved what you're looking to achieve, and then also as a leader, how have you gone about, kind of evaluating, people from a talent perspective who can, really serve with you on your teams to help achieve a common vision?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Um, So I'll start with the first piece, which was around like how I got connected with like the mentorship and the sort of positive people that I needed to put myself around. As I mentioned before, the neighborhood I grew up in, it wasn't that it was bad people. It was a lot of bad options, and
Hmm.
so it was difficult to find those sort of mentors in my own neighborhood to look up to. And I was just fortunate. God put them on my path in various ways. When I signed up for an employment program, when I was looking to get back into the workforce when I was 18, and And the gentleman who managed the program, Tim Williams, who's now on my staff here, he
All
mentored
right.
me.
Shout out to Tim. Shout out to
Yeah,
Tim.
yeah, no doubt. He mentored me and kind of helped me see my strengths. Another was my mom's childhood friend. I knew that he was a big entrepreneur doing a lot of great work in Cincinnati, Jim Vickers. And so when my mom saw that I was trying to do something better and different, she called him up and said, "Hey, I'd like you to spend some time with my son." And so I went down to Cincinnati and kind of, again, got my eyes opened up to what was possible there.
Mm,
Uh, and then when I re-enrolled at the community college, there was a professor who used to work in my community at a neighborhood center who was teaching at the college.
mm,
And he was the one that invited me to New Orleans. He was the one when I came up to him, I said, "Hey, I gave my life to Christ and looking to serve God." He said, "Well, here's a faith-based trip. We're going to New Orleans. Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Yo, I'll come." And so, it was kind of divine intervention how I got connected with a lot of those folks. But then,
mm,
I think over the years, I just because I think you got to be careful as a young professional. You don't want to. I don't want. So I'll say this with the preface of don't allow this fear to stop you from reaching out. But you don't
mm.
want to come across as like, because there's some people just thirsty. They just trying to latch on to any success they see. Soon as they see somebody successful, they're like, "Hey, can you mentor me?" Like
Yeah.
not even in the field that you're trying to be in. They just see kind of, "Hey, I see you in the paper. I see this. So can and try to latch on." So, I don't want to encourage anybody to become that. I think you want to be really
Mhm.
intentional about the folks that you see, even from a small level of just like, there's certain people in my life where I saw they were great fathers. I'm the father of four,
Mm,
great husbands. I've been married to my wife now, celebrating 11 years. So when I saw,
mm,
folks doing those sort of things, I'm like, hey, I want to learn from you all because I didn't grow up in a household where my mother and father were married. I don't know what a
mhm.
two-parent household feels like. So I need a model. So
Yeah.
I want to learn from you and kind of connecting myself to those folks to learn from them. So I would say
Mm,
just be really intentional about the type of folks that you want to connect with and
mm,
reach out to them. And I've been fortunate that none of those mentors ever asked me of anything. It's not like they're like, "Yeah, I'll do this if you do this."
mm,
There was
mhm.
never this kind of ultimatum given. And I would say that's kind of a red flag too. And if they start giving ultimatums
Man.
of, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, I'll mentor you, but if you're successful, da da da,
Hmm.
that you just
Or
want to
I'll
be careful.
mentor you if you pay me, kind of
Yeah,
thing. That
yeah.
might
Because
be a
there's
red
coaches
flag.
out there. There's coaches out there. Like if there's
But
you can
coaching and mentoring to
are two
me,
different things. Yeah,
just
no doubt, no
I think
doubt,
that those are different. Like
no
I don't
doubt.
mind paying for coaching. Like I'm
Yes.
paying you for your expertise to take me in a certain way. If we're talking about mentoring though, then I would say that that's a little different. One thing just to interject and please continue because I think this is a great step. Um, One of the points just from what you shared with us today, Frank, which is very I think interesting as well and compelling, is there's no timeline,
Mhm.
relatively speaking, right? And so, you don't have to go about things in a specific way in order to achieve those dreams, right? You spoke about providence, you talk about divine intervention, et cetera. But I think progress over perfection, because also in some of the communities like that we grew up in, and frankly, just period, a lot of people think very linearly.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so if they don't do things in a specific order, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to achieve that because I didn't go in the order that this other person
Mm,
or these other people think I should go in.
yeah, yeah.
Right. And so
Sure. And I think
I don't know if you can unpack that a little bit for
yeah, I
folks, but I
think I
think that
think
that's
with
powerful.
your podcast, it being called Only Dream Big, I think um, kind of speaks to this idea of um, dreams come. I think they're very individualistic, and you can't have somebody else's dream. You can't live somebody else's dream. It's your dream. So you almost have to, by default, scrap this idea of modeling after someone else because you
Mhm,
can't live someone else's dream. You
mhm,
know, you have to figure out what is your individual calling and what your individual makeup is, and that's what you have to pursue. Um, so I would be, I'd have to mention that. Now the other piece I want to talk about is this whole idea of mentor versus coach. I don't want to gloss over that because I think
No, please.
that is an important piece. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it first, then I'll share mine.
I'll be brief because the people are here to hear your perspective. You know, I believe that everyone needs a coach. You know, some of the greatest athletes, which we both love sports, have not won any championships or anything else without a great coach, right? So I think that a coach is someone not even necessarily that has achieved what you're looking to achieve, but can help you on some of the things that you talked about, which is getting to know yourself deeply, and also helping you, frankly, kind of bridge some gaps that you may have to the achievement of your dream. Right? I think that they're there to kind of help you improve. Whereas I view mentors, like and mentors that I have in my life, are people who have achieved some of the things I'm looking to achieve. Right? And so whether I have mentors who have are phenomenal fathers and kind of have that. It's going to be tough to say this word, but like this balance, and frankly, let's scrap balance, have the ability to prioritize their family and simultaneously have built the careers that they want to build, as an example, right? I have other mentors who, have just achieved things that I aspire to achieve, at certain levels. And then I've been blessed with other ones who, that maybe are mentors, but kind of like accountability partners almost, that maybe are, from a physical health perspective or like achieving things, physically, from a discipline perspective, workout perspective, body perspective, that I want to achieve. So I've kind of segmented, and I think you kind of hinted at this before, where I have mentors who are people, once again, I'd separate mentor and coach as people who have achieved something I want to achieve and are willing to kind of pour into me, and those are mentors. And then there are other people that I've been willing to pay as a coach because there are certain skill sets or things that I want to learn or I want to achieve, and I believe that they specialize in helping, assess my gaps and very quickly come up with solutions for how to fill those.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. So I agree with how you describe it. What comes to mind is there's this TD Jakes. I love listening to TD Jakes. He's got this viral video on YouTube where he talks about there's three types of friends. You got your comrade, you got your constituent, and you got your confidant. And the comrade is the person that you're against the same thing. So, we're both against this issue. So they'll come to battle with you, fight that battle. But once that battle's fought, at any point, you two could be at odds because you could be against each other, but, going to war together. The other is constituents, folks that are for what you're for. So the folks that, I believe in what you believe in, Frank, and I'm here with you. As long as you're for this, I'm with you. But as the moment you're, not going in the same direction, the relationship is kind of separate. And then the last is the confidant, which is the person who's there for you and is interested in you. And to me, that's the big distinguishment between a coach and a mentor. The mentor is there for you. That they could care less how successful you are in your career or if you fail or pass, they're here for you. And I think, it's rare to find good mentors, folks who are going to be there for you no matter how high or low you might be, versus a coach you can hire at any time. As long as you got the fee, they'll be there for you. So for the listening audience out there, just really, if you got folks like that in your life, to really value those folks, those mentors, folks, and identify those folks who are there for you. Because when you get them, and that's what I found, when I found those type of people who were there for me, I held on to them. I didn't let them go. I think about Sherman Jones. When I got into some trouble when I was 18, he was the one that showed up for me to advocate and he had no reason to do that. He was just a gentleman from the community and watched me grow up. And so after he showed up for me like that, I latched on to him, and I'm like, yo, you're somebody who cares about me for me. And, we have, had that relationship since then. So, I wanted to share that. But going back to where we were
That's
going to leave
powerful,
off,
man. Powerful.
yeah, I appreciate that. Where we're going to leave off was around, identifying talent and hiring talent and supporting talent. And, I think one of the things I've learned over the years is, use these assessments, these personality assessments, these strength assessments to really identify who you're bringing in and know what you need. So I think in my situations, I've known, all right, this is the specific skill set we need, the type of disposition we need on this team. If we're heavy in this area, we need more talent that has this sort of background. And so when we're doing the hiring, we go through those assessments. We see, hey, this person is more people oriented. They're more outgoing. They also have the strength of woo, and we need right now. We got the goods, we got the details, but we have no one helping to sell and woo this vision to pass. I think that's something we've tried to really lean into, is utilizing these tools. And then ultimately, I would say it kind of contrary to what I just said, is that it has to be people you trust. And sometimes I put trust over talent. I used to put talent over trust. I used to for sure put talent over trust. Early in my career, it was all about talent. You had talent.
You were out here. You were the New York Yankees of public service.
Yeah. If you got talent, you come. But then you learn that trust is something that's so much more valuable. And so I definitely have learned to put trust over talent.
Wow, man, that's powerful, man. Putting trust before talent. I mean, and it's interesting because we've been talking about relationships, right? And so, I mean, very intrigued about how you go about building trust, or at least identifying whether or not a person is trustworthy.
That's it right there. That's
How,
it. Can you
how do you go
identify?
about that? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think some of it's the traditional ways, character references. You
hmm
know, um, the interview process. You kind of get a feel for folks. But I think one of the books I've been digging into has really talked about trusting your gut. And like there's certain things that your head knows, and there's certain things that your intuition will pick up, and you have to learn to hear that voice and know when your instincts are saying don't trust this person, and ignoring that is dangerous. And I felt the consequences of ignoring that gut feeling that said, hey, this person isn't trustworthy, because your eyes see, man, they're so talented though. Oh my God, they're able to do this, they can present this well.
Yep.
This has to be the person. And
Yep.
ignoring that gut feeling that says, no, don't pass, and so getting in tune with that voice and being able to tap into your intuition and know, okay, this felt right. And that's the challenge with sometimes with these virtual pieces, is that you can sometimes miss that because you're not in the same proximity. But I
Okay.
think if you spend enough time in a setting like this, where you're having just casual conversation, and you can see the person, you can get a feel from them, because there's a way to do this right. I think the way we're doing this now, you can get a feel from me right now. I'm coming authentic. This
Sure.
isn't prescribed. I'm not reading from a
Yep.
teleprompter. So there's a bit that you can read from me. And so I think it's possible through virtual, but I think it's easier when you're in person. You can quickly kind of get that feeling that,
Yeah.
Somebody's selling you some snake oil.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And you know, one of the things that I think is really interesting about that, man, and I can say this just from the time I've known you, and probably even from my own life and some other people that I've heard, express this. But I just circling back, and hopefully kind of tying a bow at least on our initial convo, this time, because it's just there's been a lot for people to dwell on. I think that there's power in trusting your gut, and it almost grows as your knowledge of self and
Mm,
clarity on who you are and where you're looking to go. The clearer that is, the
mm,
easier it is to trust your gut. If
mm.
if if you're not clear
True. That's
on
true.
who you are and where you're going, then arguably everybody, like, you could convince yourself that
Yeah,
anyone can add value to your journey,
that's real. That's
right?
that's that's the nugget right there, man. That's the nugget. Ain't no adding to that, man. Ain't no add to that. That is it.
Man,
The
you
more you
know,
become self-aware, yes, yes, that's it. That's it. I'm not
yeah,
adding. That's
yeah.
too good.
Well, hey, look, Mayor Frank Whitfield from Elyria, Ohio, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time today. Appreciate your nuggets. Appreciate your authenticity. Being willing to be transparent about your journey, and how you, dreamed big over the years and achieved some of those things. We're going to be watching, continuing to follow you, etc. Where can folks, find you, online, writing, social media, etc. Where can we follow your journey, and what's going on in Elyria?
Yeah, thank you, Donnie. And again, thank you for this time to chat with you. I hope this ain't the last. And I just again want to encourage your audience, your listening audience, to continue to dream big, and only dream big. And yeah, you can find me online. I'm on Instagram at CEO Whitfield. I'm on Facebook at Mayor Elyria. Elyria Mayor on
Hmm.
Facebook. And I'm getting my TikTok. I got a Mayor Whitfield TikTok, so I'm on there. I
Ooh,
love
TikTok.
TikTok.
Gonna see
Yeah,
you
I'm
out
on there.
here
Uh,
dancing, and
I'm
clearly
on.
I
No, I
don't know
got
what
I
the
got me
moves
some
are,
videos
but
of me ice skating on there, falling or ice skate. It's all kind of cool stuff on there.
nice.
Um, but I got a website, frankwhitfield.com as well. You can go there and learn
Okay.
a little bit more about me.
We'll
And
try to add all of those in the show notes, at least on YouTube, and some other stuff. And of course, we'll tag you on all social as the recording comes out. Once again, Frank, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody, this has been the Only Dream Big podcast. We'll see you next week.
peace.